And like I said, I just took a guess at the artwork. Oh, that's interesting. I'm sorry, I just missed the last few minutes. My computer froze. No problem at all. You didn't miss anything. I've just been relinking some files. Okay, so looking at this, I like how it starts off with the face and then you're bringing in the stars. I think the clock resolves itself better if it comes up from underneath the face, but that's your call. It'd also help if you had some gas in the outer space, and just be careful because your particles have some shadow to them. You have the shading on, so just watch out for this. And I want to show you something right here. You've got this glow coming from the center, and it's a circular shape. And then this pops up from the bottom, which is pretty interesting. But what if we did the reverse? If this was here and the glow shrinks back from there. So like it's here and it blows out and then it shrinks inward to there. That might be an interesting way to keep the viewer's eye there. And then when this motion happens, it'd be unexpected. That's just my 2 cents. Let me see something. Or what if, because I see a great opportunity here, this negative shape comes from there. Everything circular is right near the middle. It might be nice if when this wipe goes away, that shape is there and possibly you do some type of effect or treatment, like possibly a glow or something like that, and then it drifts from out to there, because then you don't even need to do the whole orbit. That might be a pretty nice way of tying everything together as well as keeping the viewer's eye there. And like I said, these are just me. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just giving some pointers and showing other ways of thinking and helping you push your designs, because if you can keep the viewer's eye in the same place and come up with fun and creative ways, because you've got the circle thing going on throughout the whole animation, if you can come up with fun and playful ways of keeping the viewer's eye in certain areas, that might be really powerful. So this is looking really sharp, like your font. So for these particles, I am going to, let's see, window effect controls should be right here. It got turned off, so I turned it back on by going window, effect controls. Here's the effect controls. Before we dive into this, let's do save as. This is looking very nice. You're showing a lot of playful, fun ideas, and you've learned a lot independently. So for these particles here, they're already shaded, and that's giving you a little bit of a gradient, which is great. But let's see, where is that subsurface shading? Right here, the volume shader. If I set that down to 0, we get rid of some of that harsh edge and you get a lot more of a glow. And that's only if they're crossing over the composite mode, so you don't really have to worry about that. So if we do that harsh, we got rid of the glow. Now if I do a faded sphere, see the difference between those two? The shaded sphere has that dark edge around it, which adds some shadow. But if you use the faded, that gets rid of that and treats it more like the light source that it is. I think that might actually be a very good solution. Just turning off your volume shader and then switching from the shaded sphere to a faded sphere under your particle. I think that's looking pretty sharp. And I think you might even have a glow on there. Yeah, you got a glow. Great job. So again, I just want to show you what this would look like if we threw some clouds in there. Let me hit save. All I have to do is duplicate this particle layer you've already got and just throw some clouds inside of it. There we go, cloud. You could just use a cloud with transparency Okay, so we duplicated our particles. They're already there. So that just means we change our particle type for the cloud. And here's the duplicate particle system right there. Come on. Don't tell me how to crash, because I really don't want to crash. Let's lower the glow. Here's the particles. Okay. There's the particle. And when you're using a custom particle, it's either going to be a textured square, which we do not need. That'll have hard edges. Textured disc would be like a square, a circle or oval, but that will have hard edges. I want soft edges, so I'm doing texture faded disc. So it's going to have a nice soft edge around it, so you get a seamless blending of your particles in the system. So we said we're using a texture, then we have to say what the texture is. So this is where we create our custom particle, and I'm just going to do 200 by 200. It can be 200 by 200 or 200 by 300. Let me turn off lock. But you want small so that it doesn't take up too much of your processing time. And I'll call this gas. So we'll hit OK. So we've got a composition already set up. And then I just throw the cloud in there. First I got to import it. So that's going to be file, import file. Your custom particles you're going to want in their own composition, like pre-composed. That's going to get rid of a lot of trouble down the road. I'm not going to animate this because gas in outer space won't have that wavy airiness to it because there's no air in outer space. So that's going to save me some time. I'm just going to use a still image. All right, so there's our particle. And I'll call this one cloud or gas. There we go. So we know that this one's stars. I'll just call it stars. But I love how you're labeling everything. It's looking great. All right, so we already said we're using a texture, and now we choose our texture. And it's the gas right here. And I'm going to hide the stars just to make this easier on ourselves. The color map, I'm going to choose birth to death. And if you color this, well, actually, no, let's do a custom, and we'll use a color map. We'll use the colors you already have here. And the opacity, we're going to lower that a lot. But the max opacity map, here's the one. Great, you already have that, so it's set up to not fade off or fade on. Fantastic, love seeing that. So now it's just cranking up the birth and death size of these because gas is very large. And why is this looking so dark? Let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm going to lower the opacity. That's not doing it. Let's solo this layer. I'll turn off the opacity. So here's our particles. Why are they looking gray and black? Oh, wait a second. I know exactly what's going on here. I cannot believe I wasted everyone's time. Okay, so let's see. Where's my gas? Here's the gas. I did not put the custom particle in there because I'm a yo-yo. All right. I grabbed for my texture the particle layer. That's what went wrong. I should have called this gas underscore precomp, but that's number 14. And now it's working the way it should. I am so sorry about that. And this gas, the custom particle will keep it turned off. And I'll put back on the alpha. And just a warning, if you don't have a black background, when you've got transparency, it will come through as black. All right, so now for the color map, now you can colorize it like that. All right, so now we can see what's going on. I just forgot to grab the pre-comp. Again, most sorry about that. All right, and let me see if I rotate this. Is something going to happen here or no? No, okay, I'm not going to rotate that. I'll just keep it the way it is. For some odd reason, it's making the gas rotate. All right, so let's get rid of the velocity. Let's try explosive. I'm just changing up the particle system. And then let's spread it out. Okay, like such. And we'll up the birth rate. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, and we want the gas to be always there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down so that, you know what, actually I won't slide it. We'll have it come in when the stars come in. So I'll move it a little bit like that. And the reason the stars look the gas looks all the same color is because the life is too long. Let's make it even less. Okay, see, now we're getting more color because it's living less. And I am now going to take down the maximum opacity so it's more like a gas. And now I can crank up the size to make it look more like a fog. And now we can knock down a resolution. And now you've got gas. And again, it's way too dense. So I'm just going to dial that down a lot. So that right there is the space gas. And of course, the longer it lives, the less coloring you'll get to it. See how the color changes over time? That's up to you. You know, you can color it however you want with your color map. And I'm going to put the gas at the very bottom. There you go. So that was just a couple little thoughts. And again, like I said, if this, you could always have that layer end wherever the, once the screen is filled up, you know, just save yourself some rendering time. But yeah, if that came out of there, that might be pretty sharp. Just something to consider. But it's coming along very nicely. I like your font. I like the layout. You know, pretty neat. So good work. And just a reminder, when you're working, it's always good to go edit, purge all memory and disk cache, free up some space on your machine as you're going along. So I'm going to hit the U key to hide the keyframes so I can zoom in here. And I'm just going to fit this to screen. Are these actual... Let me see something. Okay, so you drew those. You should continuously rasterize those. So I guess what you did was you... Okay, careful with that. Let me see if I take off continuously rasterize. So what we got going on here. Okay, so first off, I think I can actually hand grip but went over them in Illustrator. Okay, now I want to show you something here. And, you know, this is just a rundown of what we've already done, but it's, you know, fun, simple, and easy. What happened here was when it hit U, yep, see, position. If there's no position or rotation here, and we parent these to the sword, they'll stay on the sword. So it'll perfectly match it up. So let's go, this is where they line up. So what I'm going to do, this is one of those things where it's like, you know, once you see it, you're like, oh wait, yeah, parenting will really help keep your animation together. So I'm going to hit U. I'm going to get rid of the position on this. Keep the opacity, that's fine. I'm going to hit U, get rid of the position on that, keep the opacity, that should do it. And then if I click here, let's see, not there. Is this a sword? Yep. Okay, so that's where those are. All right, now I'm going to get experimental here. Bear with me. I'm going to hit U here. Okay, there's the position and rotation keyframes. So let's try this. I'm going to see if I can stack my timelines like such. That worked. So I grabbed the extra timeline that was in here, the tab, and I put it down in the bottom bin. This is a way that you can stack multiple timelines in After Effects. So now I'm going to try and just parent this to that. Did that work? Okay, let's try opening this up. Let's do position. All right, so if I grab the position right here, and I go to the position, see that moved it, but now it's parented to it. So we'll change the anchor point on it. That's what we're going to do to fix that. So I'm going to position this like that, and I'll grab the position from this like that, and we'll rearrange those. Now let's do the rotation. So if I grab my pick whip for rotation and my pick whip for rotation. Okay. Let's undo the rotations and let's just stick with the positions. All right, so I'm going to hit A for anchor point, and I'm going to drag that back over there to get rid of that stacked timeline. Okay, so here's this one. And I'm just moving its anchor point. Like such. I'm just lining it back up to where it was roughly. Now you have to do it, yourself and get it, really lined up. But I'm just showing you once I linked those, I'm seeing if this is going to work, and probably will. Once I parented these, I had to change the anchor point, and I'm doing that by pressing the letter A, because the anchor point on the sword, it looks like it's, no, that's where the anchor point was on up there. Don't know why it's there, but all right, so let's just rough this out like that. Let's just say it's about there. Now let's preview what it looks like. Okay, that's not staying with it. That's unfortunate. It's because it's also rotating. That's why it's doing that. All right, so we'll undo that. We'll unparent it. And we'll keep your keyframes the way they were. But you're going to really have to go over this like frame by frame. So let me hit U. Yep, there's all your keyframes again. And U. Oh, let me hit undo. Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be a challenge for you. Now for the hands. I like the way that one's going behind the fog. That's what it looks like to me. So if this one, starts fading out about the same time as the other one. Let's see, where's the opacity for that? Okay, so you got that there. There. So this one right here needs to fade out. And you can just adjust your keyframes. Or, hold up a sec, let's see what we got going on here. There's the hands, there's the sword. What is this? Okay, that's your word sword because that's stacked like that. Yeah, you're gonna have to do an opacity to make it look like they're going behind the fog. Because if you move the fog over them, it's going to cover up the sword and the word sword. That's just things you gotta think about with your layer stack. But it's come along pretty nicely. I like your sound effect. I was working on both hands, but then I had to work on the first one. Oh, I think that makes sense. I can't use the move tool instead of messing with the anchors. I wouldn't mess around with the anchors because there's position and rotation happening with this sword. And if it was just position, your hands would move with it and there'd be no problem. But the fact that it's rotating, and it's rotating from a different anchor point, these won't line up with it. It's like, oops, sorry. Think of it this way. If I've got this, we'll pretend this is your sword, and I'm holding down Command or Control to move my anchor point using the pan behind tool. Your anchor point's down here, so that when you rotate, you get a swinging type of motion. Your hands, I'll just represent those with an oval. There you go. Your hands basically have their anchor point here to look like they're moving from a wrist. So there are two different locations for the anchor point. So as this one bends, the greater off you are in your angle of trying to match this up, the more it'll change over time and distance. So it's a bit more difficult than that. But going through it frame by frame, or like every third frame, will help you line those up. You know, like let's say right here, how that hand looks off right there. So if I go to, not that hand, this hand. So I hit R for rotate. Oh, okay. There's no rotation on there. Okay, so right about here's where the rotation starts. So if I click there, I go to there, and I rotate a little bit. The hand's going to stay on it a little bit better. But then you're going to have to figure out where the anchor point needs, because you have it at the center instead of back by the hand. So what's going to happen? Move that anchor point. So it's going to influence the position as well, but let's see how the rotation looks. So that's going to change everything. That's why you set your anchor point first. But with a little bit of work and, you know, giving it some extra position when you need to with the rotation, you can keep the hand with it. It's just going to take you some time. But the rest of it's looking pretty nice. I love how you're using sound, and the blood's looking great. Very nice. That's coming along very nicely. Yeah, so just watch those hands. And also, one last thing to consider. Let me go into 100% here. And let me pan with my hand tool. Okay, see the style. You've got a very lovely illustrated style for the sword. And you're working with tones that are, you know, it's a limited palette, but it's really good. I mean, this is slick, and I'm liking the way this looks. Now with the hands, let's go back to the hands. The hands, it almost looks like you grabbed a photo of a hand and then did a vectorization of it. So there's more tone and values and color in the hands than there are in the rest of your artwork. So if you think about the way the hands are drawn and try to limit that palette the way you've got everything else, it should come along pretty nicely. So that's up to you to think. I mean, do they even need to have any representation? Could you get by with just silhouettes and some lines to mirror this type of artwork? Just something to consider. Yeah, always try and get the motion down. Now, since these are in Illustrator, let me put it this way. If you keep this shape and then just work on the way it looks on the inside, or you edit the artwork later, but you keep the rough shape of it, you can just swap out that artwork. Let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm gonna hit save. Right, so I'm gonna close this, and then I'll move on to the next person. So this is okay, so I'm going to go composition, new composition, 1920 by 1080, because that's what we're working with in here. So I'm going to turn off the stroke. Okay, pretend this is your hands. So I'm going to call this, okay, there's hands 1. Now, if I duplicate artwork in the timeline and make changes to it, that's going to edit the original artwork if you're using pre-comps. So I'm going to duplicate my pre-comp in the project panel, Command D, and I'm going to name it Hands 2. Now this would be 2 different art files in Illustrator, but I'm saving time by doing it here. I'm also going to change the font, and I'll change the color of the font. And I'll change the color of the shape just so you can see what's going to happen here. Okay, here's what the first one looks like. That's what the second one looks like. And you'll pretend these are your hands, and each one of these is different artwork in in Illustrator. Okay. So this is going to be like your main animation. And I'm going to put that right there. Oh, cancel. So I'm going to go P for position, Shift R for rotation. So I'll go forward, click here, move forward a little bit, move this, move that, and then I'll add some rotation, let's say right here and there. So right here, it's going to go back a bit and then go back to there. All right, so let's pretend this is your whole animation with your hands. You got some position and rotation with your old artwork. Change that render area on that side. All right, so there's position and rotation, and you did a lot of work, and you're like, all right, I just want to swap out that artwork. So this will be the new artwork that you imported. And here's the fast way of swapping out artwork while keeping all your keyframes and effects. If you select the new artwork in the project panel, and then in your timeline, you select the layer that you want to replace. So this is the new art in the project panel. This is the old art in the timeline. Have them both selected and hold down Alt or Option when you drag. And I'll hit the U key. And there's your new artwork with all the keyframes already applied to it. So you can finalize your motion, then edit your hands artwork, rename it, bring it in, and swap it out that way I just showed you. And you'll keep all your keyframes. So that way you can keep moving ahead with your motion. Hope that helps. Let me show you something. This should be a little fun and interesting thing. So trees. You've got 3 trees here. Okay? I'm going to show you guys a fun and fast way. So I'm going to make a tree particle, and I'll call this pre-comp, and I'll make this 200 by 200. And I'll grab your tree's artwork, and I'll scale it down so it fits inside. And I don't even need all 3 of these. With some lighting, it should give me a 3-dimensional look. So if I right-click and I turn this into shapes, by right-clicking, convert, create shapes. Now I can probably hide. Oh, that's a lot of shapes. There we go. All right, so there's our tree particle. And I'll hit save. Now I'll make a main animation, pre-comp, or I should say timeline. Like such, and it's going to be 1920 by 1080. And if you're going to work at 30p, that's fine with me, 30 frames per second, or you can do 24, whatever you want. Now I got to find those trees. Tree PC, that's the one I made. I'm going to hide that. Now we're going to add a new solid, and this will be tree particle. Like such, color doesn't matter. I'm going to make it comp size. Sometimes color matters, like if you're doing light effects and things like that. Let me see. I think most of my artwork is in the zip file. Okay, so I'm trying to get good by the storyboard. Okay, yeah, so take your time, well, not take your time, but just try and get little by little done. I'm going to put Particle World on. That's the 3D one. Put that on my particle layer. See? And there's our particles. Okay. Fire might be a little bit extreme. So let's go to our physics to change the engine. Explosive, that's what that is. Direction axes. Okay, that's not half bad. Jet sideways. That's not half bad either. Let's try this one. And we'll give it a very long life. Because trees aren't moving anywhere. Okay. So, let's change the velocity. That's going to make it too thin. Okay, we'll do that. We'll up the resistance so it's not moving too much. Okay, now the gravity, we're going to make it 0 so it doesn't shrink. Now it's going to be on one line. Okay, now our producer. We don't want these going off the ground. So I'm going to keep them like that so they're all on one line, and then move them closer or further from the camera. Like such. Some of them are still too high up, so let's crank up that resistance. Now you see them being forced to stay more towards that line, which is what I want. Okay, so now we can do our particle. And for this, I'm going to do a textured square. We'll try that because it's just going to have the tree inside it. And our texture will be the tree PC. So I tore that down. And coloring it over time is actually giving you more than one tree color, which is pretty interesting. So I'm going to make the maximum opacity 100. And the opacity map, we're not going to have it fade on or off. See, look, now you're getting different colored trees. That's pretty fun and interesting. Okay. Now, let's work on, let me hit save, the extras. See, now you can get that forest look with that little tilted thing, if that's what you want. I just did by going extras effect camera. I'm going to hold the particle release. And then move forward a frame. Let's have these. Less, live longer. Okay, fine. Let's wait till all the trees are about there, I guess. They shouldn't be born that quickly. They should live a little longer. And you can always adjust how they are with their layout. Like such. I don't want the Y. The Z is good. Yep. So what Effect Camera does is I can fake how these fit into the scene to make it sit in the scene better. So it's like there's a camera here and we're rotating around it. So that's just extras effect camera. And if I zero this out again, you'll see the particles are straight on. So we're just giving it a little bit of interest and depth and dimensionality doing it that way. And lastly, you could just say, well, these particles can be bigger, and we're going to keep them the same size because they're not going to shrink. So size variation, yeah, we'll do 100% for that. Maximum opacity. That for that, and then should be volume shader. Let's give it a volume shader. See, look, now we're getting some depth and density. I'm liking that. Okay. Now, some of them are popping up the way they shouldn't, and that's probably going to be the effect camera doing that. So I can just fiddle around with that a little bit more and say that's looking pretty good right there. So we've got a whole field of trees like that. And say you only want this one image, it's like you could still place a camera in here going layer, new, camera, and I could animate a zoom into the scene for the fun of it. Let's try this. I'm going to add a little bit of grass to a light color just for a little bit of tonal difference. Okay, so I'm going to put this below the trees and just try and match that a little bit like that. So now go back to our effect camera. There's not one in here. We don't need the Z rotation. Okay, that's looking better. Change the position of that a little bit. And there's your field of trees again. And you should be able to go through that with the camera and a fly through. I don't know why it's going so weird. Layer new camera for the new camera. Well, that's what's going to make a new camera. I'm going to have to look into these changes that they did, because this is ridiculous. That's how I created the new camera. The fact that this change is so severe. See, now it's working. This is working the way it should have worked. So I just deleted the camera and put it back in. Now we've got our zoom in and out, which you could animate if you wanted. See, that's the beauty of particles. You've got this nice field of trees to go through, should you choose to, and you only had to make one of them. You didn't even have to make 3 different colors, because colorizing the particles did it for you. So that's just some of the benefits of working with the particle system. There's the orbit camera, you know, gonna hit undo. See, like that. Fun stuff. And this way you don't even need to use effect camera if you're using a camera here. And again, like I said, you could always move in and out of it. So that's for that. Yeah, don't sleep on your animating, like the bear. Let's see what your logo looks like. Same thing for the blade of grass. Like, you could create a field of grass with, you know, particles. That's the fast and easy way of doing it. Remember, if you're working with pixels, make sure they're RGB, not CMYK. I showed you before how to break down this into multiple shapes, so you got an idea of how you want the head to rest. And unsure if these are claws or sound waves. Think on if you need them or not. You know, that's up to you. I like the repetition. That's for you as the designer. But like I said, you know, we're getting pretty late into the first semester. Let me see. So next week, these will be due. Now, since some of you are struggling, I will change this date to, so if Wednesday is, all right, I'll give everybody, let me think, no, 10:04. Yeah, so if that's week 7, so that's 10:04. Then the last assignment is due the 15th. So that's 2 months. Okay, I'll give you 1 extra week on this. Let me see something real quick. Yeah, so I'll give you 1 extra week, and then, so not next Wednesday, Next Wednesday will be the final lab for me helping you out with this first assignment. Then the week after that will be the live crit on Zoom. Do the animations need sound? Nope, the animations do not need sound, but sound always pushes your work. So I'll make a note and email that out to everybody. Like this, a roar would really push it. I mean, it looks silly if it's roaring and you don't hear a roar. So, last week I went over in depth, the layering and all that for this. So, dive into it. You got a long road ahead, but with time management and focusing on your anchor points and the 4 pillars of motion design, you can get there. Nothing's insurmountable. Let's see. Let's pretend this is your final logo and all your animations there. Helps with the process if you keep your work clean. Folders are a big help, and they prevent you from losing files and things like that. Okay. So you could go File, Import File. We're just double clicking the empty space. I'll put this here. Okay, so here's the audio. I imported it and I dragged it into my timeline. If I twirl down, there's an audio. If I twirl down again, there's waveform. I'm going to twirl down again. Now you can see where the sound is. So if I want to hear the roar at the 8-second mark, I can quickly line that up by looking at the sound waves and tying it in with my animation. Like such. So if you're going to use sound a fast way, like I said, twirl down your arrows till you get to the waveform, and that'll help you line it up perfectly with your animations. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Here's something to consider. You're not seeing the full arm or the character, the rest of the person. It's a little weird to just be seeing a pair of floating hands. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's either have them or have the whole character. Yeah, no problem. Like I said, really get to motion because nothing's moving right now and you got 1 week left. So, don't sleep on it. So I'd probably say don't have the hands at all at this point. Because it's either have the hands very well drawn and the rest of the figure. Because if you don't have the arms and all that, like if the sword's going to stay there and the hands are going to disappear, let's look at it without the hands. And then with the hands, you go saying, why do the hands stop there? Where's the rest of the person? So I'd say I wouldn't even have the hands. And let's see what's going to happen with the fog. Does the fog fade out or it just ends with the rest of it? I think, yeah, it ends with the rest of it. What were to happen if your smoke, here's the smoke. What were to happen if that faded out and left just the graphic there? So let's see what that looks like. So if I go for T for transparency, and let's just say for 1 second. So there's time for the logo to resolve itself. Well, I just faded the opacity on the smoke. I'm seeing how that looks because the smoke isn't really part of the logo. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to have a nice clean graphic like this, we'll see how that looks. 1 second. It's almost done rendering. I'm rendering it at full. That explains it. This light effect is going to be quite the strain on the operating system. I should say the computer. I don't think it needs the hands at all. Wait, why is... Oh, ha ha ha. I see what happened here. I didn't click the stopwatch by accident. Okay. So we'll go 7 to 8. No one called me out on that. And then 0. So there's your smoke. Like such. So let's have the light be the reason why it's fading away. See, like that. Okay, now let's see what that looks like. See the difference? Yeah, no problem at all. Now, one thing to be concerned about here is your whole resting logo is off center. Now, if that's the way you want it, you know, fine. Let's see. There's the center of the screen. And it's sort of like left of center. Let's... I mean, that's up to you to decide, you know, but no one ever said it has to be in the center. You know what I mean? Put the blood behind the sword a bit and move the text. Top. Okay, so the blood going. Yeah, you know what? That's actually a good suggestion. Let me show you something. Where's the blood? There's the blood. Okay, so let me show you something fast and easy. If I duplicate that layer, I'll call this blood front and blood back. Okay, so all I did was duplicate that layer. And if I put it below the sword, and then let's move it a little bit. And I'm putting it behind the letters too. So now we've got some depth. That was a really good call. And the only thing I'm going to keep it above is the smoke, obviously. Look at how much depth that added. Let me show you the difference. See? That is pretty slick. I like that. That's really cool. So I'll send you this file. Next Wednesday's the last lab before the assignment's due, and the Wednesday after that will be the crit on Zoom. So, you know, make sure you've got a lot of this worked out so you can get the most out of next week's lab. If there's any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can wrap it up early tonight. Now, with Peter's blood, we did an offset. And I just want to show everybody a little something about offsets. All right, so my anchor point isn't where I want it. I'm going to hold down Command and click on the pan behind to get it to the center. All right, so let's kick this up a notch because that's what lab time's about. I'm going to put a trim path on here. And remember, the effects you add go in the order you add them. So I'm going to animate the end. And I'll click there. I'll go forward. I'll animate it on. So there is that going around like such. Now I'm going to add a wiggle paths to it. And you can see it wiggling as it draws on. Okay. Now I'm going to add a zigzag to it. And I'm going to take that down a little bit. Make it smooth. Lower the ridges per segment. Like such. So I've got a little bit of interest going on. Those are the effects I threw on. Now let me change the stroke a second. I'm going to give it a round cap, a round join, and then I'm going to taper it just for the fun of it. So we've got some thick and thin happening. Like that. All right, so that's going on. So I changed the stroke effects and then I added 3 line effects. And I'll zoom out and watch what's going to happen with the offset. I go offset paths. Now, Peter's, we went inward to make that pool of blood disappear. You can also go outwards. So this is going out, and his went in. So I can pick a time. I can say here, and then go forward. Change the amount of the offset space. And then I can change the number of copies. So I'm going to go from here, go from 0, and I'll go to here, and I'll up the number of copies to something small. Let's do 5. Now let's fix that offset because we've got some copies going on. No, it's not there. It is the amount. Yep, see, there's the amount that they're offset by. Okay, good. Now let's bring down that. Now they're spread out a little bit better. Okay, good. See? There we go. Oh, I like the texture in the background. That's some nice weight to the brush there. I like that. That's looking really sharp. That is pretty slick. Very nice. You lined up the weight of everything very nicely. I'm very impressed. I like the texture here. All right, that's looking pretty slick. All right, let's take a look at this real quick because we got some time and that's what it's all about. Okay, so we got this paint and it's sitting on a texture. I just want to see what's going to happen if we try and bring that texture in. So is this the bottom stroke? Yep, okay. There's the bottom stroke. What's going to happen if we, just for the fun of it, let's see if we, there's luminosity. Let's try screen. No, we don't want screen. If you change the blending mode to multiply, you get the color plus the texture of the canvas. See the difference between the two of them? So if you want a nice clean paint on top, nothing showing through, stick with the normal blending mode. And remember, these are your modes, switches and modes. These are your switches. Just click here to go back and forth. So if you want that texture to show through, you can just change the blending mode of the stroke, the paint, to multiply. So that's one way of messing around. I'm thinking about adding, yes, exactly. That's the next thing I was going to go with. Thank you. You read my mind. I love that. So now I got to find the, where is that part of, is this pictures thing all one word here or something like that? Is that what's going on? And also don't forget to continuously rasterize the art. Oh yeah, you can't do that if there's that thing going on with it. That's looking great. Okay, so that's the pictures, and it was here that we put that on. Oh, here's the text. It's locked. Oh wait, is that the top text? Yep, that's the top text. Okay, so let me show you something real quick. It's a shape layer. Yep. All right, pictures. All right, so here is your type, and it's Illustrator artwork. Let me continuously rasterize that. All right, I'm going to try and throw rough and edges on. I don't think it's going to work, but I'll show you what will make it work. So if I throw rough and edges on it here, oh, that did work, huh? Well, what do you know? that definitely kicks up with the painterly look. Spiky might be the way to go. So really just watch how much you go to it. Adding a little bit of rough and edges to it will definitely give you some of that texture. Just watch the amount of it and which type you use. So yeah, that will work. That's looking sharp. You know, like I said, I almost kind of think the solid paint without the texture showing through is the way to go. That's just my 2 cents, because this looks too computer generated, whereas that looks more uniform. Normally I say, you know, texture, but the opaqueness of the paint, I think, lends itself nicely to that. I mean, really good job. Let me just try one more thing while we're here, because that's what it's all about. Really slick. I'm very pleased with how this is coming out. Okay, there's your bottom stroke of paint. Let's try something real quick. Take a look at the difference between the two. If I throw some glass on here, see how you get a little bit of that layering, that height to it, and you can change how much or how little of that you want. So let's just dial that down a little bit. There's no glass and there's with glass. You'd also change, see, that is pretty interesting. Doing it even a little less soft to get that. See, like, look at that bevel it's giving it right there. That, compared to those two, this looks like it has some depth to it. Like it's actual thick and thins of some paint on there. And that was just throwing glass on there. You can also change the color of the lighting and the shading, should you choose to, make it more severe. I'm going to undo that. So you got tons of options. You can change the direction of it. That's pretty interesting. That's if you like that. That it's glass. So I'm going to keep that selected so you can see that. And I'll send you this. It's looking great. You know, that's the type without rough and edges. There's a little bit of rough and edges on the first thing of text, which might be a little too much. You know, it's because you want it to be legible. You know, so it's one of those pick your battles type of things. Like, I almost think the cleaner, more deliberate type, you know, let's turn off rough and edges, but let's see what happens if we take this glass and there's pictures right here. See, now that's not doing much to the... Look at that. Throwing that on the type gives it a little bit of a smeary look to it. And you could change shows just by messing around, but that's just other ways of showing how the paint mixes when you're working with it. That's pretty interesting. So it's all for you to consider as the animator, things like that. Just little, like I said, little changes drastically affect the look and feel of it. So it's, up to you as the artist to say how far is too far and when does it start looking, pretty good. And obviously, changing these settings gives you different looks too. So that's not so good because it's going past that, whereas that's a little bit better. It's all up to you to think about. Yeah. So I'll send you this to have as a reminder. So the CC glass gives that extra bit of depth and layering to the paint to make it look like it's physically more deep rather than flatter. And with the type, you can make it look like it's smeared into that, which is, pretty neat interactive element in and of itself. So nice job. That's coming along pretty sharp. You did a really good job controlling the width of the brush as well as the paint effects. So good job there. That's looking really sharp. You might consider some music, maybe some sound effects of like a brush scraping against the canvas or something like that. Just things to consider. So great job. Again, like I said, Christian, get animating. You've got your artwork more or less lined up. So hopefully you have a bunch of stuff to show me next week. Last week's lab, I went over piece by piece how to animate based off of your storyboard. And, that's a good way of doing that. Also, what might actually work out in your favor, Christian, if you're still on? Let me show you something real fast. So Christian's storyboard looks like a comic strip panel. All right. And we're going to pretend this is one panel of the comic strip. And then this is another panel of the comic strip. So let me say, because remember, I teach with simple shapes so that everyone has time to learn. And over here, I'll just put a different piece of artwork in there. Okay, so this is panel 1, this is panel 2, all right? And these are the artwork inside your comic book panel. And, all right, great. Remember, if you add an adjustment layer, that affects every layer beneath it. And you can throw the transform effect on it, which has the 4 pillars of motion design on it: position, scale, rotation, transparency. So let's pretend this is comic strip 1. I'm going to go position, scale, come in a little bit. Let's scale in, change that position, zoom out here so we see the full screen. Like that, dive in, like such. Now we say, hey, look, you're looking at a comic strip. Here's what's going on. Here's a little bit of motion happening. Keep it there for a few seconds or however long. So if you need to hang on something, remember, if I start moving again, it's going to change instantly because it's going from here to my next set of keyframes. But if I want to stay here for a little bit, I say how long I want to stay. Add some empty keyframes with these diamonds. These are the same. There's no change happening over time. So now I can say, let's go back to the beginning of the comic strip and zoom out. So now we see you zoom into the comic, hang on it for a little bit, then you zoom out. And remember, ease your keyframes, right click, hang over them. Now we can say, let's hang on that for a beat. So I'm going to copy these, and then we're going to zoom into the other one. So we'll scale up. like such. And it'd be really sharp if the motion starts pretty subtly before you zoom into it. So then you're really drawing the viewer's eye in. So that is the fast way of keeping your comic book look and feel while adding that interactive element to it, like such. So that's something I would consider as a way of going from frame to frame in your story. That's just my 2 cents. That's one way of doing it, and it's a fast way, and it's been used time and time again. So just something to consider. All right, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend. As always, reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, and I will gladly make an extra video with some screen sharing and showing you that stuff, where we could set up a one-on-one Zoom call, whatever you're comfortable with. So, like I said, I'm very happy with some of the work I've seen coming along, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their evening and a good weekend. So next week is one extra week of lab time. Remember that it is not due next week. We'll do lab next week. Then the week following will be the crit that's real time in Zoom. All right, so doing good so far. So just keep it up. And next week is one extra lab before the final critique of the first assignment. So contact me if you have any questions or concerns. I'll do a screen share with your work to help you push your ideas, or we could do a one-on-one Zoom if we can line up a time schedule for that. Yep, no problem at all. All right.